All right, this section is going to be called trig ratios. It's kind of a combination of parts of 7.5 and 7.6. We're going to talk to you about the three different types of trig functions, tangent, sine, and cosine, and how to identify them, and then the next lesson we'll talk about how to solve them. So we start off by just talking about what a trig ratio is, and we know that a ratio is a fraction, and a trig ratio is a ratio of the lengths of two sides in a right triangle. So we have a right triangle, and then we are talking about putting one side over another side and which one goes over which. And there are three different types of ratios. There's three different types of fractions. You can have the tangent fraction, the sine fraction, or the cosine fraction. And the tangent fraction or the tangent ratio is opposite over adjacent. So let's say we were talking about the angle A. So if you put your finger on the angle A, you're coming from the angle A's direction. So we always identify the hypotenuse, you draw through, you make sure that you know where your H is. And then when your finger is on A, the side that is opposite from A is all the way over here. So this would be the opposite one. With your finger still on A, the leg that is adjacent would be this one right here, the one that's right next to or the one that touches A. So this would be adjacent. If we were talking about coming from angle B, they would be flip-flopped. This guy would be opposite. This one would be adjacent. So it matters which angle you are coming from. So opposite over adjacent is tangent. Sine, again, if I was coming from A, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. And the last one, cosine, is adjacent over hypotenuse. And mainly today what we're going to be doing is just setting up each of those three trig functions. One of the tricks we kind of use to help kids remember all of these and who goes with who is this little acronym SOHCAHTOA. And so this is sine, S for sine, and sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent is opposite over adjacent. And so it kind of walks you through what you should be using for each one. So if you keep this handy, you'll kind of get to know which trig function uses which sides. So we're going to write down the tangent, the sine, and the cosine of each acute angle. So each one, S and R. So I'm going to go tangent of S, sine of S, cosine of S. And then we're going to do the same things for R. So tangent of R, sine of R, and cosine of R. That should have been a little bigger. So tangent of S, I'm going to put my finger on S, identify the hypotenuse right away, and then from S, tangent uses the opposite and adjacent. So from S, the opposite would be 80, the adjacent would be 18. So 80 over 18. The sine of S, sine uses opposite and hypotenuse. So opposite from S is 80 and hypotenuse is 82. Just write in fractions, just identifying sides. Last one, cosine of S. Cosine is adjacent, so next to 18 over hypotenuse, 82. Tangent of R. So we're going to turn the corner here and I'm going to put my finger on R this time. So tangent is still opposite over adjacent, but opposite from R is going to be 18 and adjacent is 80. It's the flip of this one. The sine of R is opposite over hypotenuse. So 18 over 82. The cosine of R is adjacent, 80 over hypotenuse, 82. And then if you look, these two switch. So there's a lot of symmetry going on in your triangles when you start to figure out these answers. One more example, doing the exact same thing. So we're going to do sine. Oops, we were doing tangent first. So we'll do tangent of K, and then sine of K, and then cosine of K. And then we need our other one too, so we'll do tangent of J, sine of J, and cosine of J. So tangent of K, we're going to identify our hypotenuse always. And tangent uses opposite from K, so 15 over adjacent. Sine uses opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine uses adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent of J, putting my finger on J. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. And cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So those are your three trig functions for today. Keeping this guy in mind, SOHCAHTOA, kind of helps us remember which trig function goes with which sides, so that you can remember that sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent.